Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's now past 10 o'clock, so we should make a start. Welcome to the Richmond Area Planning Committee for October. Trying to get the right month. We're all present except that you are.
Yes, I am substituting for Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you. I'm David Webster, Chairman of the committee. The officers are Fiona Hunter, Ian Nesbitt, Bev Booth, not here. Peter Jones, Jonathan Smith, and it says John Worthington, but I can't see him.
He's not in attendance today.
Planning officers, Francis Maxwell is Legal Services and Vicky Davis, Democratic Services. May I respectfully ask that you switch off any mobile phones or devices and put them onto mute. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded and may be recorded by a member of the general public, and we have a number of press and public or observing the proceedings via Teams. All the applications are as per the agenda. The recommendation may change on
Or a screen.
which will be explained when we get to the application. We have several public speakers today. Each speaker will be called by name when it's your turn to speak, and when you come to the public speaking seat, and you have 3 minutes to speak. One will be given after when 30 seconds are remaining. To turn the microphone on, press the button at the centre of the microphone base, and to turn it off, press it again. This meeting will not be broadcast live due to other meetings taking place simultaneously. However, a recording of the proceedings will be made and will be placed on the council's website as soon as possible. The microphones around the room will pick up any sound for the recording, and should be used to enhance this, please speak slowly and directly into the microphone. No other participation of the meeting is allowed. Please do not circulate any documentation or photographs, etc., because it will not be considered today. Please do not communicate with councillors or pass notes during the meeting. Agenda item 2, to agree the minutes of the 12th of September as a true record. All in favour? That's carried. All right. All members are invited to declare at this point any interests, including the nature of those interests, or lobbying in respect of any items appearing on the agenda. None declared. Item 4, which is from Hutton Rugby application, 50 houses comprising of 15 affordable and 35 market houses. And this is to be presented by Mr. Ian Nesbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. My apologies first off for my voice. I seem to have woken up with a bit of a gravel in my throat, so I hope it lasts out, but might be a bit touch and go. So I'll try and speed through things just to make sure that doesn't happen. Just to draw members' attention to the update list. I won't go put it in full, but I'll just give members an idea of what you're looking at. In the base of that list you got last night. So just based on kind of legal advice and to be thorough, first couple of matters just sort of procedurally and policy essentially. So I've just put in there to make members aware of the ministerial statement. sure as politicians, you're well aware of the new government's stance on housing going forward from July. So it's just a recognition of that, as the ministerial statements can be material considerations in the consideration of a planning application. So I won't go through it, but as most of you will be aware. But I think the important thing is officers have considered that, in the round of this application, and don't really think in terms of the things that matter to this application in terms of sort of housing targets. The local plan still stands in that sense. The change to the standard method, or referring back to the standard method, doesn't really affect the housing targets. So they are as they were set out in the officer report. Similar as well with item 2, just on a neighbourhood plan for sort of Huddersfield neighbourhood plan area. The plan is just not at a stage where we can give it any material weight. I know it's that's not for the want of the community trying to get it off the ground, but just in strict planning terms, it just doesn't carry any material weight at this point. So that was just to really address that element. There are point 3. There are initial representations in there, 1 supporting, 2 objecting. They've been circulated as part of the update list. There were a couple that have come in late yesterday on there that weren't on the update list. So again, they've been circulated this morning. So hopefully members, not very long, so hopefully members will consider them from Mr. Lavender. And the 4th point is just about the archaeology. You'll have picked up from the report that there's an archaeological consideration. Since the report was published on the agenda, the archaeological geophysical survey submitted by the landowner. I've summarised there and also commentary. Essentially, there's a few things in there, but essentially haven't identified any significant archaeological constraints on the site. This has been backed up now by the council principal archaeologist who's happy for it to proceed. I did go back to him yesterday just to be 100% sure, and he's let me know he doesn't think there's a need for an archaeological condition given what's mentioned in the report. So there is an update on the update in terms of condition 27, which was in the report, which recommended an archaeological written statement of investigation. There's no requirement for that now in terms of the officer view on that one, so that can be stripped from the recommendation. Again, I'll get into it in a little bit, but condition 2, the eagle-eyed view, we've seen that there's quite a plethora of house types on there. Some of them are a hangover from the first application in terms of a larger scheme. Again, I'll come to it into the presentation. I won't go into it now, but it's just to say that condition 2, officers recommend that's updated just to include the house types that I'll be referring to in the presentation, the latest ones. So all that aside, it's kind of led to an amended recommendation on there. So it's still a minded to grant recommendation, subject to getting formal go-ahead from Natural England on nutrient neutrality. All the relevant documents, including the provisional certificate, have been submitted to them, and the council has carried out an appropriate assessment, which is you need to do, as members will know, on there. So we're just waiting. Officers don't feel there's going to be anything, that'll come up negative, but nevertheless, we still haven't had that formal positive recommendation from Natural England. So the mandate of grant is to cover that, subject to Natural England's approval. In the same vein, the lead local flood authority must have been consulted 4 or 5 times on various iterations of the drainage proposals. So there is we have got to a point where the lead local flood authority got no great issues in principle. There's a couple of things to cover off though, and the way it's seen done in the report is through conditions, which verbally I've been told the lead local flood authority are happy with. So one is to cover off the surface water management and maintenance plan going forward. as I say, the local authority officer is happy for that to be conditioned. And the other one is it's really to make sure that the surface water system is capable of taking the flows from the development. Now, there has been work done around that, but quite rightly, the legal local authority is saying, well, look, we need to be 100% certain in terms of looking at the system that's receiving this surface water to make sure there's no broken pipes or there's nothing blocking culverts, that sort of thing. So in theory, in practice, the local authority are happy with the drainage scheme proposed. It's just that on the ground, does it actually work given the current situation on there? Now, the way to deal with that is through CCTV surveys, just to make sure there's no broken pipes. Again, this is something officers feel can be conditioned because there is a plan B if it turns out that that scheme just can't work, and that is it would go into the public sewer. So Northallerton Water confirmed that look, if it was proven that it wasn't practical or feasible to discharge surface water to watercourses, then they would pick up the slack on that one. So because we've got plan B, again, lead local authority have said that they're happy in principle. However, like all these things, they're a statutory consultee, so we really need to have their formal approval in writing. So the second part of that is a long way of saying it's subject to the written approval that lead local authority not just verbally happy with those conditions, but put it in writing. There's also the third point. I will go on to the presentation in a minute, but obviously it's important within an amended recommendation. There is a reconsultation out at the moment. Now, I just want to be clear, this is not on any major changes to the scheme, certainly not in terms of layout or housing numbers or access, nothing like that. But, as things happen when officers put reports together, there was one or two things came in last minute around the archaeology, for instance, in terms of the mapping, and a few things in terms of clarification on surface water drainage, as well as the appropriate assessment I mentioned. Myself as case officer just felt it was right and proper to undertake a 10-day reconsultation on that. So that expires on Sunday, this coming Sunday. So it's a mandatory grant subject to no further material considerations or different material considerations being raised at the end of that. Obviously, if there is, then officers would bring that back to members to consider. There's the Section 106 agreement there, just to cover affordable housing. I'm sure we'll get onto it in members' questions, but the design code for the custom-built houses that will be covered by the Section 106 agreement. Just to say, it's 30% affordable, which is a policy compliant requirement. And there's also a highway recommendation for a travel plan fee to monitor that. There's issues around the community land in terms of sort of maintenance and kind of measures to make it pedestrian friendly and to discourage motorbikes and other vehicles from entering the system, or the community land. And there's just one final thing just about education in there. Now, you'll have seen from the report, there's the education department of the council are recommending to cover a shortage in primary school places. There's a fee to pay towards that contribution. Now, I've covered it just to be on the 100% safe side. The council previously would have always said that will be dealt with through SIL, through the community infrastructure levy on there. It's a bit more complicated now in terms of new government guidance on that, saying, well, look, if it's not technically ring fenced, then there's argument that it's not covered by it. So again, I've just put that in just to make sure we're 100% sound on that, just to clarify that with colleagues to make sure, if it's not covered by SIL, then we're getting that payment through the 106 separately. Right, I'll put that aside. I'm sure you're sick of hearing my ramblings about the update, but I thought it was important just to kind of go back to that. I'll come back around to that at the end, just remind you of the updated recommendation. But just to get started, really, just the first slide, please. Oh, sorry, Fiona. So, as most members will know, certainly the ones from the site visits, on Monday. We're looking at a greenfield site here. So it's a scheme it's a highly amended scheme. As I say, it's had several iterations. The main one being that it originally came in for a much larger scheme, 79 houses. That involved not just this site, but a kind of a site across the road of Garbutt's Lane. On there, it's called what was called the Embleton Farm. That was removed several months ago, probably a year ago now, in reality, from the scheme, just on officer recommendation in terms of quantum of development and meeting policy. So we're now down to just the site on the south side of Garbutt's Lane on there. So we're looking at 50 units on there, when we've got 4 custom build plots, which I'll explain further in the presentation. We're on the western central edge of the village, as you can see from that red star. Again, I talked about policy. So officers consider it to be outside the built form of the development, but nevertheless adjacent to it. So that kicks in with policy HD5 plan, which is the housing windfall, which says subject to various criteria, providing it's adjacent to that built form. There's an in-principle support for this kind of development on there. Obviously, you can see there the various shades of green. It's a countryside setting, and we're very much in that countryside setting in terms of the edge of that western part of the village. Just as you can see to the left-hand side there, the yellow line is the A19, as members will know, which is about 2.5 miles to the west of the site. Just getting to those kind of the meat of the site, really. As you'll know, there's the red line indicates the actual application site. The blue line being land within the owner's ownership, but not technically part of the development site. Now, I'll explain a bit more what that land edge blue is, but it just for now, just members note it as community land, and obviously it's adjoining to the southwest of the main site. So in terms of size, we're looking at 3.66 hectares in terms of the application site, and the land edge blue there is approximately 5 hectares on there. In terms of what's around it, in terms of that development, you can see there. So immediately to the north, you've got quite a modern development called Paddock's End, which is 100% affordable scheme, granted by the council several years ago. You'll see there that the kind of elongated access goes through the Paddock's End development to connect up with Garbutt's Lane. That's a single access point for the vehicle access point for the scheme there. And to the south, you've got the properties and the extended gardens to the rear of Langford Road. And then, as you can see there to the east, there's various residential properties, some of which are on Garbutt's Lane. Just give you a bit more detail about what we're looking at. I'll go through a bit more detail on the other slides, so I'll just give a general overview of what members just need to know really. So main things are there is a watercourse, as members will have seen who were at the site visit on Monday, that goes along the northern boundary of the site. That's closely followed by the public footpath on there. Other things to note, I'll get onto it later, but if you just look, you can see going down the centre of the development is that dark line, which is existing hedgerow. So one of the benefits of this scheme is the intention to keep many of the hedgerows where possible within the scheme. So use them as boundaries to curtilage boundaries and that sort of thing. So just make you aware of that really. In terms of tree planting, the southern boundary, there's intention to kind of enhance that planting on that boundary there, as well as some tree planting. You can probably see that wavy line towards the northern boundary of the site. So beyond that, I'll get onto it in a bit of detail later, but you can see I might just be able to make out a series of swales, and there's a suds pond there. So quite unusual these days, to be fair, to get suds actually as a pond that can be used as as wildlife, but that's what they're doing. There's also reed beds as part of that kind of sort of system, so that'll be used in part to mitigate the impact of the nutrients, the nutrient load of the development and site there. So just moving on. So yeah, just I've probably said most of what I need to say here, but it's just to give you a bit more close up really of that northern part of the site. So as you can see there, there's a pond just by that access into the site. There's also a pumping station for the foul water, just that kind of cyan coloured rectangle just by the access point. You go, please, Peter. Just the central of the site. As you say, you've got the kind of central spine road kind of going down the middle of the site, and off that the layout is essentially kind of courtyard and type arrangements off there. Again, just another the hedgerow going down there by the side of the road there. And last but not least, the southern part of the development site, really. So, yeah, just because the probably isn't a plan that shows it in any other great detail, just to make members aware, the 4 custom build plots I mentioned, you can see there the bigger plots along the southern boundary there. So that's where the custom plots will be within the site. There is a design code. I know we discussed with members on a site visit about how high these properties would be. There is a sectional plan later on, gives an indicative height, but essentially the usual process for custom build and self-built properties is to have a design code, which is kind of followed in terms of general principles. As I mentioned, that will be done through, or so recommended that's done through the Section 106 agreement. And just to have a look at the community land there, so it's an interesting concept in terms of what's proposed here. So it's kind of so there's kind of public benefit really in terms of both wildlife, but also in terms of kind of community interaction essentially. So the trees you can see down that southwestern boundary, that's described as kind of native woodland, and members won't be able to make it out, but there is a pedestrian footpath kind of we're kind of walking through that really. So that's got an access point from the turning head you can see there at Lambrun Road to the south on there, and there are links through to the new development site as part of that. On there, there's a central area which is grassland and scrub. The landowners confirmed that it's proposed to plant wildflower in there, and as I said, the scrub will be is often good for wildlife. So there's a bit of a mix of kind of community uses in there. There's a community orchard proposed along the northern boundary of the site, and it's important to say that access to the site will be permissive. So it wouldn't be a formal fully right of way, but there will obviously be those permissive rights to access the site. Don't normally like tables or words in reports and presentations, but I thought it was important just to touch on the housing mix because it kind of leads into design as well. But it's quite an interesting, genuinely interesting housing mix being proposed. Maybe just about work out there that actually all the market housing essentially is single story. So it's all bungalows. Of course, they're 2 or 3 bedrooms. Now, generally speaking, that is a sort of housing. The planned areas is often been short on it. Is to encourage. So this is not by any means a market scheme with 2.5, 3-story houses or flats in there. It's pretty low scale. Now there is 2-story buildings, properties within this, but they're related to the affordable, which in terms of providing a good housing mix, it's not just about single-story properties. It's about providing affordable houses for the people who need them. So officers feel there's a really good housing mix proposed part of the scheme. Just move on, please, Peter. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's never great showing sections because it never shows up in any great detail. But the reason I've just included this in here really is just to kind of show you the kind of literally the lay of the land really. So you can see there it slopes slopes from that southern boundary of Langford Road down essentially, as a general rule, down to the northern boundary where the access and the water course is really. I won't dwell on it, but just to show you again, you can just pick out that actually there's no large, there's very few two-story properties in there. A lot of it's single story on there. Now you can probably just make out the kind of red kind of distance measurement markers, on there. So that is where the plots for the custom build there. So what members are essentially looking at is kind of a sections is it like cut through of the site. So that top one, as it's mentioned there, is looking eastwards. So that's essentially the point of the spine road, looking eastwards. So you can see the lay of the land, but you can see there that the custom build plots, as I said, not showing it as large. But I think officers would feel that two-story would be okay there. I don't think I appreciate that being some concerns raised about the size of properties in these custom builds, but I think there's enough distance with the extended gardens of the properties on Langford Road not to cause any great significant overlooking issues. Certainly the properties on Langford Road. So it was just to make you aware of that. Just being on page, please. Just some nice illustrations of what the scheme may look like. Now, it comes with the important caveat that these are just for indicative purposes only, and these are taken from when the scheme was initially put in. So there has been throughout the months this application has been going on for, there have been changes, but it just gives members a general feel for the scheme really. As you can see, that spine road down centre, and the planting and the infrastructure and the northern boundary. Maybe on, please, Peter. Yeah, a better flavour of what you're looking at in terms of some of the property styles there. You can see members just note a kind of mixture of colour and materials, which I'll touch on in a minute. Yeah, just getting on to kind of house types really. As I mentioned, the affordable have a mixture of kind of two-story and single-story properties. In terms of the affordable, we've got nothing greater than kind of 3 beds. So we're looking at 1, 2, and 3 beds. So ironically, the larger property in the bottom right, that is the building that will have the 1 bed properties. You've got read my notes right, just make sure I'm saying the right thing, but I believe the bottom left is a 2 bed, yeah, and then obviously got two beds as well in terms of the single story properties. So just to give you an idea of the materials there, a bit like Paddock's End actually. Members who were on site on Monday will have seen, there's a mixture of building materials in there, like but predominantly render and brick. This scheme, although it's certainly it's a contemporary style, is try to adopt a lot of those materials that have a kind of mimic that vernacular essentially. There is timber garage doors with the properties that do have garages, and there are those modern Juliet balconies on some of the properties. But yeah, a good mixture on there. There is and as you can expect, UPVC windows and doors. Just move on, please. Yeah, just getting on the market again. Very similar in design. It's undoubtedly contemporary, as I mentioned. The market ones have got a bit more flourish, I would imagine, with the steel chimney stacks and that sort of thing. But I think officer's view is it just kind of works, particularly at that smaller level where I think you can go with a bit more of a contemporary style. And as I say, there's a more than a good nod to Paddock's End, which this scheme adjoins. I won't dwell on the photographs, but just to mention my point really about that palette and the materials in Paddock's End. If members can remember who in the site visit, this is the view kind of looking towards that northern hedgerow boundary of the site. So this is essentially where the access would come through from Garbutt's Lane through Paddock's End, that central point in there to create the access into the site. again, just a bit closer. Clearly, we've got the watercourse there. So the highway will essentially go over through a culvert really to go over that. So it'll come through that part of the hedge really to get to the site. And a good array of footballs in the beck, not much water when the photograph was taken, but again, just make members remind members where the watercourse is. So essentially, the photograph before is kind of it was taken from a position kind of to the left hand side of that, and this is kind of a sideway on. Now there was an issue with the public footpath. It turns out that the definitive route of the public footpath is different from what's actually on the ground at the moment. So local residents will know better than I do, but essentially the informed public right of ways as it's currently used, it goes along that near side of the watercourse. When in reality, it's the definitive plan shows it on the other side of that hedgerow. Now, this was subject to quite a lot of conversation and discussion with the council's footpath team, and it's clear that actually, when we look at it, even taking into account on the plan definitive route of the public footpath, the scheme doesn't physically affect it. So the footpaths are absolutely happy with the scheme on that basis. And again, this probably makes more sense to the members who were on site on Monday, but this is just the start of the public footpath, kind of to that east of the site, which goes behind the garage there, as you see the car park there. So that's just giving a wider context. A bit more Paddock's End, and again, I don't think we need to dwell on that too much. And just some more wider shots really. This is just Paddock's End as it fronts. Oh, sorry, jumping ahead. So this is Garvett's Lane, looking eastwards, with Paddock's End on the kind of right hand side of that photograph. Yeah, members will have seen in the report that there was a little bit of angst amongst officers about the impact on the wider landscape. So obviously we've got a nice green, pleasant, countryside setting to that western edge of the village. Now, clearly, putting 50 houses and the associated infrastructure is going to have an impact, a detrimental impact on that landscape setting. Now, we're not roadside, and I'm trying to put that red arrow on there to just give members an idea of the context, really. So we're essentially behind Paddock's End here. So it's certainly not a roadside development coming out in a linear fashion against the roadside. We're not talking about that. But nevertheless, members just make out that kind of gradient of the land there. So clearly coming into the Garvett's Lane from the west and the A19, you are going to see this development certainly on that rising ground on there. But it's took, there's no doubt about it. The majority of it is tucked behind those dwellings there. Now the community land is obviously going to be a little less intrusive into the landscape. But I wanted to flag that because officers are not saying this doesn't have an impact. It's just saying it on top of everything in the balance, that impact is considered to be acceptable. And again, just trying hard to emphasise the laid land really. So as you see in that centre, there's the gradient up to Langborough Road really. And a few shots just within the site itself really. Again, just not the hedgerow. That hedgerow in the background will be kept. Just another shot from the alternative view again, just showing that northern hedgerow. This is from where we stood, members who were at the site visit on Langborough Road, so that turning head looking down over the community land. So the application, the development site itself is beyond that hedgerow you can see on the far right. Well, as I said, this is looking down to the north of the community land. So there will be a public footpath, a footpath that would kind of snake around here to that left-hand side from that turn ahead from Langborough Road. And again, just a little bit further back, just to give you an idea of that turning head. That's a lot of what we've got to say on it really. Just remind members again that it is a mandate to grant recommendation as per the update list and the conditions in section 12 of the report, including those that were superseded or amended as part of the updates. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt. The first of our public speakers is Derek Simpson, who's an objector.
Thank you, Chair. The approximately 130 objections to this proposal highlight too many policy violations and errors to cover 3 minutes. So I'll highlight just 3. Housing need, biodiversity, and the future impact. With respect to housing need, page 1 of the proposer's housing need document says that Putney Rugby's catchment area is considered to extend beyond Hamilton into Middlesbrough and Stockton, and our catchment calculations incorporate a relative high allowance of 7.5% for inward migration. In the proposer's planning and affordable housing statement, it again anticipates cross-boundary movement from Middlesbrough and Stockton. These housing arguments are diametrically opposed to the local plan, which says there is no need for development from other areas. The local plan is also very explicit in that there is no requirement for further housing to be allocated in neighbourhood plans. The Parish Council's neighbourhood plan has already passed Regulation 14 consultation. Again, this proposal is in direct conflict with the local plan's position on neighbourhood plans. With respect to biodiversity, the local plan requires DEFRA's guidance and relevant tools to be used. Version 4, the DEFRA metrics, was published some 14 months prior to the applicant's biodiversity metric submission in May 24. So version 4 is required by the local plan. As the applicant's ecologist noted in their email to the case officer on the 29th September this year, the guidance for version 4 is that most newly planted street trees should be categorised as small. The metrics submitted do not follow this guidance and classify the trees as medium. The use of the correct guidance classification, i.e. small, results in a 28% loss of biodiversity rather than a 28% gain of biodiversity. With respect to future impact, the size of this proposal is defined as large in the local development plan and cannot be described as incremental, especially when the 25 dwellings on the opposite side of Galvez Lane yet to be built are taken into account. If this proposal is approved, then other large developments under HG5 are certain to follow using the same housing needs argument, and they'll be very difficult to refuse. 150 dwellings in Great Ayton, 200 dwellings at Stokesley would all involve a low percentage increase in this site. If any later application was refused, then almost certainly it would go to appeal and succeed. If proposers believe a large-scale development is required in Hutton Rugby, then they have opportunity to make the case in the upcoming local plan for North Yorkshire and should do so. This proposal should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Our next speaker is Alan Mortimer from Rugby Parish Council.
Thank you, Chairman and members. You're tasked with determining a very large windfall proposal for 50 homes in our village. This is huge compared with proposals made under the predecessor IPG policy, which had a normal limit of 5. By definition, this is large-scale development. And I ask, is there any precedent for approving large-scale development under HG5? Our main issue is scale. The cumulative impact of adjacent developments will increase housing in Hutton Rugby by over 10% within a short time frame. Members on the site visit would have seen the other site for 25 homes, which was approved in 2017 and not yet built out, is within 50 metres. The officer didn't mention this. Pro rata, this is an application of equivalent to a development of 150 homes at Great Ayton. Is this really the scale that was intended for HD5? Our neighbourhood plan evidence shows that supply from the two adjacent developments would significantly exceed parish housing need over the Hamilton plan period. But a smaller development with a similar mix would be sufficient, and if allocated through the neighbourhood plan, this would be likely to receive a high level of community support. In brief, the grounds for refusal set out in our submission are that large-scale development contravenes the S3 principle that only limited development will be located in service villages, and that HD5 tests C of incremental growth and E to no detrimental impact and character appearance are failed. Moving to the net nutrient mitigation proposals on the adjacent land. And this does improve the overall proposal, provided potential community benefit, and screening from the use of this land can be fully secured. We are concerned that it might not be. So if members are minded to approve, we ask you to apply conditions related to this land which ensure that it must be used to deliver the nitrogen mitigation, and this cannot be substituted by purchase of off-site credits at any time. Footpaths and planting are delivered before any occupation of the site, or preferably earlier in the development, and that the S106 includes protection against unreasonable withdrawal of the permissive access rights. Ideally, the Parish Council would like to see the proposed new footpath achieve PROW status, and the opportunities are taken to improve the condition and alignment of the existing PROW. The planning balance will be materially worse if these proposals for adjacent land are not delivered or are later lost. Comprehensive and robust controls through conditions and S106 are essential. So we also ask members to consider whether a condition requiring early delivery of the main block of affordable housing would be reasonable. Obviously, your officers take a different view to us in policy, compliance and the planning balance, but you are the decision makers. Please consider our points carefully. Our community asks for your support. Thank you on behalf of the Rotherham Parish Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mortimer. No. Our final speaker is Ronnie Baird on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning, members. Just for the record, most of what that Alan mentioned at the second half of this speech there is quite acceptable. In 2020, Broadacres Housing Association carried out a housing needs survey into the needs of Houghton Rugby village. This village survey was designed to consider everyone's needs, including existing homeowners who are interested in downsizing. It emerged from the survey that there was a high demand for 2 and 3 bedroom private bungalows, together with a need for affordable homes, especially for young people. There's also a demand from resident families who moved away from the village and who would like to return to a home of their own. An agreement was reached with Broadacres for them to submit a planning application and acquire the site. They took great care in ensuring the design met all the requirements of the Houghton Rugby Design Guide, which had been produced around 2010, as can be seen in the design and access statement which was submitted with the application. Broadacres had some consultations with the Parish Council and started to prepare a neighbourhood plan in 2016. However, there was a difference of opinion. The neighbourhood plan proceeding group wanted a very limited development based on an outdated housing needs survey, whereas Broadacres wanted a larger scale project that properly addressed the housing needs of the village and got benefits of economies of scale to make the project commercially viable. The site is a favoured site where the neighbourhood plan team want to build. The size of the houses and the housing mix of 2 and 3 bedroom houses, mainly bungalows, are what they wanted. Your planning officers have heavily influenced the planning application. In 2023, following discussions with officers regarding the number of houses, it was agreed to remove the Embleton Farm part of the application. The number of houses were reduced from 79 to 50, and some 1 bedroom units were introduced into the mix. The loss of Embleton Farm aspect also resulted in the loss of some of the community benefit aspects of that part of the project. And this has been one of the catalysts for the introduction of the community benefit that you now see. The application has also been delayed by nutrient neutral. This is achieved by a combination of credits and inclusion of the additional land. Although legally this site doesn't have to have a requirement for 10% net gain in biodiversity because of the date of the application, the gain is actually over 28% without even counting the community land to the west, which would make it over 50%. I'm pleased to say that the changes in development have led to increased support within the community, albeit mostly from the silent majority of people. I'm no longer public enemy number one. Earlier this year, the parish council voted themselves on the current application and narrowly voted against it by 5 votes to 4. So it's a close situation. The development offers potential to provide wider community benefits, including amenity land for woodland, a community orchard, and a connecting footpath through the village. This proposal is a high-quality design that meets the planning policy as determined by the council officers and will produce an exemplary development that meets the needs of young people wishing to get homes and elderly people looking to downsize. I ask you to support this application, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. I'm going to go to the ward member first. Councillor Hugill.
Thank you, Chairman. I did think I was officially on the list of people that spoke first, but thanks for coming to me first. I'm not going to say too much at the moment. We'll maybe save that till later. I just want to point out 1 or 2 things to the committee. First of all, the number of residents who have responded to the consultation, and I'm sure we've all read the way that they've responded. Just point out the response from the parish council, and we always have a response from the parish councils when we have these committees. But you've got to say, I've got to commend the level of detail that goes into this response, because they've left no stone unturned in and sticking to what we all know we need to stick to, and that the starting point of any application is policy. And I think they've done that quite well. So moving on to policy, and this policy HG5 related to windfall, I think if we grant this today, I think I'm probably right in saying it could be the biggest one that we've that's been granted on this policy. As the chairman of the parish council said, it did start off as an IPG of 5 properties, and we've now got to where we are now. We've got this sequential test on this one, and I think it would be beneficial for those watching on if it could go through that to see where you've got to reach this decision of approval. And likewise, something we always get in these villages, the cumulative impact of property. I've never really got a proper answer how that one's measured. I think that's one to discuss it in detail, and I'll reserve my right to speak in the debate later. So thank you very much. And if I could just have an answer for those 2 questions, please.
So just on the sequential test, Councillor Hugo. I mean, obviously it's a combination of 2 things in terms of the assessment. So one is providing the applicant providing a sequential test document, which they've done for this application, and the other side of the coin on that is officers looking at that and testing it and make sure it kind of stands up. So the starting point is always the applicant submitting that. Now I would have to go through the section of the report to remind myself, but from memory, officers felt like that was sound and had no reason to kind of question it in any fundamental way. In terms of sites in Hutton Rugby, in terms of providing this kind of quantum development, overall, I think the conclusions of that were there was no sites likely to come forward or available at the current time. So officers were happy to go along with the conclusions of that sequential test.
If I may, just adding into that, I mean, the main thing is looking at whether or not there's previously developed land and whether or not there are sites otherwise within the built form. All of the sites that then were examined in terms of their availability for a development of this sort of form were on the edge of the village. It's not a It's not a beauty pageant from that point of view, so there's no necessity then to go to examine all of those in turn. It's simply a matter of assessing whether or not there is, as I say, previously developed land or otherwise a site within the built form of the settlement.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Can I just come
Come
back on
back
that one?
now.
Just on the community, thanks for those answers. The most helpful. Anybody want to understand what the community development?
Cumulative.
Cumulative. Okay.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, isn't it? And I appreciate parish council in particular, as you say, Councillor you got in there a very good response. I've made that point, haven't I? That you've got the 25 units across the road, not a million miles away from this site, the wickets. Now, as you know, the kind of HD5, one of those criteria considerations is to look at cumulative impact. And I think, forgive me, I think I did put a percentage in the report about in terms of overall increase in the size of the villages. It's always a judgment. I've got to say from a planning officer about that cumulative impact, because it doesn't just depend on the size of the village in terms of whether it's acceptable. It's that level of services, as you probably appreciate, that can be in terms of working out that quantum of development that can be carried. So, it's not like the local plan for Rugby has there's allocations where you can say, well, look, you're going to have that quantum of development, set aside. Plus, we've heard about the neighbourhood plan. It's just not at the stage in terms of kind of formally allocating those sites to be able to give it away. So, really, in terms of cumulative impact for the village, it's always going to be about these kind of windfall and those smaller ones. Now, I take what some of the points that are being made about, well, does 50 fit within the windfall policy? It's a point it's worth debating. It's no doubt that it is large for that policy, but officers got to be clear. There's no quantum ceiling on that, so it comes down to that criteria in the policy. So, is it able to accommodate in terms of sort of landscape or the impact on the setting of the village? All those considerations. Also looking at it as a in a round in terms of that cumulative impact. It can't just be about numbers, because ultimately, if you want to appeal, there's just not a number criteria where an inspector would look. So I think I'll just sum up by saying I think it's more like cumulative, looking at it in a round in terms of landscape and services and all those sort of issues.
I think, if I may, Chairman, I think that's really fair that the IPG has been referenced in presentations. This isn't about the IPG. This is about local plan policy as it stands today. And the policy, as Ian says, clearly doesn't set a particular ceiling. It's clearly for members to decide in the round whether or not the development and the benefits of the development outweigh the harms. And in the report sets out the nature of the harm in terms of the impact on the character of the countryside surrounding the settlement. It's a matter for members, and it's completely reasonable for members to look at issues of cumulative impact on the settlement. Clearly, the report and clearly officers' position is that we feel that the cumulative impacts are acceptable in this case. It's entirely for members to come to their view if they agree or otherwise. That would be an arguable point. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a point before we go any further, just can I ask, was it considered for this to go to strategic planning, with it being such a big site? If that's the case, it wasn't considered, would there be a reason why it wouldn't be considered, or just explain that to me a little bit more, please?
So offhand, the requirement to go to strategic is 250?
I think it's
500 units.
Okay.
So yes, it doesn't get anywhere near the criteria to go to strategic.
Okay, that clears that. First of all, I'd like to address some of the concerns from the parish council that there's mention of the 25 houses. Well, unfortunately, The national policy framework just tells us that we can only deal with each applicant's own individual merits. I wish we could do anything else, but we must stick to that policy. So we can't look at that, unfortunately. I don't believe it's right, but that's what I must actually concentrate on. So what sticks out to me is that it's looking at the parish council and with the reports, there was 120 people against it, for either not for it or neutral. What I really want to look at, which is not enough detail, well, two things. The first one is the 106 community grant that was mentioned by the parish council as well. Can we condition some of that it doesn't get pushed to one side, and really get some detail that there's an agreement between the developer and the parish council of how that looks? Because I don't think there's enough detail in that, and I've been fallen foul of it myself with my own units where it just gets pushed to one side, and I don't think there's enough detail in that 106 agreement. I think that's quite key to going forward if I'm minded to go talking about that. It's a very technical. I'm minded at the moment to defer it, because if you're going to get something as important as this, and I'm open to debate on this, if you get something important, we need to do the best for this development. It's got to have community. It's got to have the benefits to the community. And there's a lot of reports. I think there's a lot of bits missing. And I'd like a little bit more information on what was mentioned about the biodiversity, which was supposed to be done 14 months ago. I don't know if there's been policy changes with the new government and that, but at the moment I'm minded to defer, but I mean, I could change my mind with some more information. It's just not quite there for me. I think you're giving away, or we're going to, if we're minded to get greeners, we're going to give a really special bit of land away. I don't like greenfield lands being built on. And one thing I've been looking at really intensely, I can't find, I take it it's Fabric First that they're going for. Is there any mention of solar panels? Is there any mention of some of this stuff, the climate emergency, that this council is a priority on? That would help this environment as well. So there's to me, unfortunately at the moment, it's too many questions more than answers for me. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. The representative from the parish council mentioned early delivery on the affordable housing. Is that something that we could condition? And my second question follows on slightly from Councillor Foster's, who mentioned some of the missing reports. Am I right in my thinking that delaying this application wouldn't enable those reports to come forward because it was submitted under different planning laws?
Just to answer your first question, Councillor Jones. Yeah, it's a good point about the affordable housing. So it's pretty standard practice to include in the Section 106 agreement percentage of the market housing to be done. Also, sorry, the other way around. A percentage of the affordable housing to be done before a certain amount of the market. So you get that staging scheme, just for the simple reason that you're not left in a situation where all the market housing's being done and the development goes bust or whatever, you don't get it. So there is a staging that's pretty well trodden track in the Section 106.
Yeah. Could I just add to that? I mean, the development partner here is Broadacres. So the delivery is predicated from their perspective on delivery of affordable housing, just because of the way their mechanisms work. Granted, we don't know that will happen in the fullness of time. So the mission, could be sold on to a third party, clearly. However, our expectations certainly are delivery through Broadacres. Okay. The other part of that is clearly the way that the site is built out, such that there's a process through the site in order to lay out the site, get the infrastructure in, etc., etc. And there's a natural, because of the way we seek to pepper pot affordable housing within the development, it's almost inevitable that those properties will get built out. The other part of that is that our record for delivery and passing on, if you will, of third-party affordable housing is excellent in this district. So in other places there have been issues because there simply haven't been housing associations to take those properties on. That's never been the case for us. Now, clearly, it could be a risk. However, because of the way that we've performed in the past, actually, from a cash flow point of view, the affordable units are better than the market units because they can deliver those early doors. They're all paid for, all bought, and sort out. My position on it is that the risk is really low from the point of view of affordable housing. Sorry, what's it back to you?
Just to answer your second point, Councillor Jones, in terms of reports, just to be clear what we've got in terms of biodiversity net gain. So you'll have heard from Mr. Simpson, who spoke earlier just about that potential discrepancy in the biodiversity net gain, and in terms of what has been done in terms of the calculator. So again, Mr. Simpson mentioned it. I went back to the applicant's ecologist to discuss that matter. The answer I got back was one I was happy to accept, which was, well, look, yes, the biodiversity net gain has been calculated on an earlier version of the calculator than would be expected if the application came in now. Now, obviously, this application's been in, I would say, several months, but it's by this point several years. So obviously, there's been a bit of a lag there. Now, I've got out with the professional ecologist that actually, when you calculate it, even with a new calculator, there won't be any material difference there. Now, I appreciate that's agreed by local residents. I've tried to deal with that by kind of locking it down by condition. So if you draw members' attention to condition 2029, so just to make sure that what the ecologists are telling me will actually happen, true. I've tried to lock it down with that condition. So that bakes into the requirement to meet those 28, nearly 29% habitat units and 5.87% hedgerow units. Now that's what's been calculated using the earlier biodiversity net gain calculator. Now, obviously, we're talking about differences in trees. Now, there is an answer to that from the ecologist, which is on public access. But essentially, I've tried to cut through that by saying, well, look, you need to run this scheme through an up-to-date calculator at the time of coming to a detailed biodiversity net gain plan. And the backstop position is those percentages that you've told us you can achieve, because ultimately they need policy. So, if we're talking about specific trees, then okay, there should be no reason why they can't get medium trees in rather than small trees if it means that they're able to meet those requirements. So I think officers are happy with the condition, kind of holds them to what they said they want to do and still meet policy.
Brilliant, thank you. Nice something that. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. It's an interesting conundrum for a village as regards sort of future development. Do you actually support a development that's coming forward in the hopes it limits longer term expansion from the village? This one, to me, with the common area, actually achieves that. What my concern is, how do you protect that common area going forward from further development? It seems that if you look at the layout of this site, there's a couple of cul-de-sacs that lead directly into it, which would be a concern. I think as regards the numbers for a service village, living in a service village, which is probably smaller than 100p, we've had a significant allocation, but that allocation is back on affordable housing for local people. You have to strike the balance there at some point. One of the earlier speakers mentioned that a lot of this is based on possible migration from Teesside. I go back to 100p in the 60s. A lot of people came from Teesside, not Teesside at the time, but Middlesbrough, etc. And that's where the employment was. That's life, unfortunately. People will commute. You can't stop people travelling. My view is that if it could be conditioned sufficiently on the common land with a few minor tweaks, which I'm sure the officers would deal with, and they've already highlighted a number, that this is a feasible development.
Is that a proposal?
Yes,
Seconded.
Well, just to remind you that the recommendation is minded to grant.
I agree with that, but I would like to make sure that focus is put on the common area and its long-term future.
Just on that point.
Get the order of Councillor Jones, your second again.
Yes, I think we'll go with the officer's recommendation.
Mr. Jones as opposed to Councillor Jones.
No relation, no relation.
Maybe one day. Just on that point, so the protection is there in the Section 106 agreement. Now, clearly, like we always say in these scenarios, we never know what's going to be put forward in the future. We don't know where the numbers will go in terms of need for housing. That'll be a matter down to the new local plan and obviously government legislation as time goes on. In terms of this decision here and now, I'm very confident that we've got the building blocks in place in order to protect that land and to provide for its maintenance, etc., into the future. Now, as I say, clearly somebody could come forward in the future with an application which we would have to consider. At that point in time, and one would expect the new local plan to be in place by then, clearly there's an opportunity, if this was being built out, there's an opportunity to look at additional protection through the local plan process to protect this as public open space, green open space, what have you, depending on whatever criteria are put forward at that point. So that there are other opportunities to offer it greater levels of protection or further levels of protection as time goes on. Clearly, we're in a bit of a vacuum, I suppose, from that point of view, because we're currently operating under the old Hamilton local plan and then moving forward into the new North Yorkshire local plan. So there are opportunities from that point of view. If an application came in, let's say, 4 years' time, before the local plan's in place, then we would be back to that game of waiting what the most important elements are. Now, clearly, it would be completely arguable for members to be saying, you know, this development was predicated on the delivery of this community open space, and therefore we would be minded not to support that. That would be a completely reasonable and logical argument. Clearly, we would have to weigh that against any other matters that were coming along at that time. So I suppose we can't say that it's protected forever and a day as a result. The Section 106 agreement gives protection, gives access, gives all of the immediate elements. But we simply don't know what will be put forward to us in the future. But it would be for members, obviously, to come to conclusions based on the material considerations at that time.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you. I did mention if we could put conditions on, and what you've just said, is there any way we can put a condition until the local plan's adopted in 5 years' time? Is there any way at all we can condition this land to protect it until such times as the new local plans come in? I think it's really so important to this community. They made it loud and clear, and the question is simple. Is there anything we can do on conditions?
So in my view, the Section 106 agreement does that for us. We don't need a condition to lay, or it wouldn't be appropriate then to lay a condition on top of that in order to try to, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for, to try to sort of belt and brace into the situation. In my view, the Section 106 agreement is sufficient.
You want to come back?
Can I repeat the question? Question was, is there any conditions we put on it? I don't want a different answer. I want a particular answer. Is there anything that stops us putting a condition on it? I don't want to talk about whether you think what we've got is enough. I want to know, is there conditions we can do?
No, I would say a condition wouldn't be appropriate.
I'll answer the question again. Can we, not appropriate, can we put a condition on it?
Well, I'll say no in that case.
Okay.
Councillor Mrs. Morehouse.
Yeah, thank you. I was looking at the public right of way, which is on the northern boundary. Does it anyway join up with the person's access? I couldn't quite catch it on there. Is an opportunity from the public right of way? The missing asset was going to go across on the community land. Will that join up anywhere? I couldn't quite see it on the map.
It does, Councillor Moorhouse. I've got the plan here. Just
Yeah,
give me a
that's what
second.
I
I'll.
want. Yeah, well, I'm trying to find it on here. And obviously, I was trying to see whether, because I am a bit concerned about the access from the. We were talking about the access from the north, not very good northeast, but yeah, from where the public right of way is in the north.
Yeah, I think the answer is. I don't think there's a clear connection at the moment. Sorry to have paper, but sometimes
Yeah,
it's
well, I mean,
to a
okay.
plan B. If you just have a look at the kind of purple line, that's the current line of the footway. Now the community land is kind of this.
Yeah, I've got it on here. Yeah.
This bit here. So probably remember from the
Can we have a
plan.
look from there, do you think?
So as far as I can see from there, there is a separation
Yeah.
between the two. There isn't actually a connection between the public right of way, a physical connection between the public right of way
Well,
and the
what
and
would
the
be an
route of the.
advantage? Would be an advantage, wouldn't it?
From my perspective, I see no reason why we couldn't include that within the.
I would suggest that because I think going on to the next point, the access from Landgraf side. I mean, this is a little bit on here on the updates about you looking at to create footways, surfacing enclosures, gates, barriers, any form of access to restrict access, which I don't know mean that to have access from that area. There was concerns, I think, by the parish and probably by ourselves that it shouldn't be used for being restricted to walkers, pedestrians, rather than encouraged for people on bikes and things like that. I mean, that is concerning to me. That I'm not sure. I mean, we can't stop. It says on here, possibly. I mean, people we talked about children going to school across there. Often there's people with pushchairs, and I don't think it'd be suitable for that, but. I think that's got to be looked at in detail to allow people to get through there, but equally to restrict people on. I'm not against motorbike, but people like that using it, and possibly I don't know whether mountain bikes. I don't know. What's your feelings on that access bit there? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Moorhouse. And yeah, obviously I appreciate it was a point raised at the planning committee. So my wording there is probably a bit of a at the event way of kind of covering that,
Yeah.
but. Yeah, obviously, I don't think we'll be the first kind of community land that needs to address this problem. So it's deliberately lacking detail because obviously, as part of Section 106 agreement, we'd have to have a conversation with the relevant, departments and authorities to make sure we've got that balance between, stopping motorised vehicles, but obviously, meeting legislation in terms of access requirements and that sort of thing. So, obviously, there's a balance to be struck there. I think I haven't got the answers for you now because obviously that would need discussion with my colleagues. But I think there is. I think, as I say, it's not the first bit of land that has this problem that's been addressed.
Yeah. So would that have to be conditioned also?
I've put it down as Section 106 agreement. It's got a bit more sort of legal protection and requirements as part.
And the possibility, well, not the possibility, the PRO and the permissive access joining up at some stage. So it's just through.
Yeah, I think it's a good point in hindsight. Yeah.
Councillor Hugill.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't realise it was deliberately looking in detail, but I think, to be fair, I think a lot of people would, and certainly Councillor Foster, sees that it is lacking in a lot of ways, that green area. And I think if you are minded to approve it, I think we need to get something set down where we can get the community involved in all the decision making. I'm really concerned about the path going on to Langworth. Those of you at the site visit on Monday, you can't help but notice what a peaceful, well laid out place it is. It could be as a result of a consultation of some sort that the people of Langworth might want to use that to get down to the spur shop at the bottom. But I think that's for the community to decide rather than us. But this path, I was a bit disappointed it didn't make it onto the map. But I see, and I've said to a lot of people, my ambition for a path in there is similar to what we have at Northallerton. As you go over the bridge, you look up, coming from this way, you look over to the right, and you see this lovely path in a sort of area where people can just take exercise, and that's what's needed. And it needs to be maintained. It needs to have a hard surface. People in Hutton Rugby, we take our path seriously. the village were one of the first to implement what was then the county council pathkeeper scheme, spend a lot of money on maintenance, and so they would really want a really good path, and just maybe a circular one, just somewhere to get exercise, and I'm just not seeing that at the moment. Likewise, the community orchards, the wildflower meadows. I just think we need to maybe talk a little bit more about that, because it's a big area of land. It's 5 hectares in old money. That's 12 acres. I don't have any fields as big as 12 acres. It's a big lump of land, and we need, if it's going to be approved, we need to get some benefit for the community, and this could do it. But as I say, at the moment, it's not doing it at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
You've got, I'm not going to be too negative this time. I did forget to say how pleased I was the bungalows with them. I think the housing mix is really, really good. It's important that we have a balance of what we're seeing here. Is there any way they can make that path, their public path, in time, or is there a process we can go through to make that in the future? And with the minded decision, if it goes through, is will the chair and the vice chair be involved before it's signed off? Thank you.
Okay, so on the subject of could it become a public rights of way in the fullness of time, yes is the simple answer. The rather more complicated answer is that there's a big old process to go through. So notionally that could happen. In terms of, and I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head here without speaking to the applicant, of course, as well. But when I've done this in the past on other sites, we have built into the Section 106 agreement a requirement for consultation. So notionally, that is something that we could include. As I say, I've not had a conversation with the applicant on that topic, but notionally, that is something that we could build into the Section 106 agreement to require. We couldn't do it in such a way that what would be the extreme end of that equation, that it's down to the parish council and neighbourhood group, and simply put it, that simply wouldn't be reasonable. I think, in the circumstances, having some form of consultation such that there is input into that would be a reasonable thing to put in the Section 106 agreement. Subject to this note.
Something legal, I would think.
Did say we wouldn't want passing note.
Yeah, so but really just a note around the potential for it to become a public right of way. Certainly, the way that it would be set up at the moment would have to be with landowner consent. So if you've got a route that wasn't public right of way that had been used for years and years, you could then go through the Highways Act in order to try to create that as a public right of way. It wouldn't be quite the same in this situation. It would have to be with landowner consent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, are we all done? Councillor Hugill.
Yeah, just going on to sort of my role as division member here, and clearly I have sort of been quite vocal, especially as when I was getting elected, that I was against development in this village if it didn't create any sort of community benefit. And so coming into this meeting, I see the possibility of community benefit from that green space. And that's why I'm asking a lot of questions about the green space, because I want to see whether that will benefit the community. And that's why I've sort of come into this in an open mind. And that's why I'm making my judgment on, do I see community benefit out of that green space? I think that hopefully clarifies the situation.
Right, we're all done. It's been proposed and seconded that the committee are minded to grant. Those in favour of that proposition, please show. That's 6.
Can you just remind what the resolution was? It's quite a long list of, so that you're fully aware of what your mind to grant is. Are you okay, Brian?
Yeah.
Or would you like to?
No.
Yeah, so it's a minded to, so that if you are minded to grant, it must be subject to the points that are set out in the officer's update report. So it's that written confirmation from Natural England on the assessment, neutrality assessment. Got confirmation from the lead local flood authority that they've got no objection to the permission subject to the conditions, which they're going to come back on. So we need that formal confirmation, and the completion of the section 106, which has the 30% affordable housing for self-build plots, the implementation of the biodiversity net gain, the financial contribution of 2,500 towards the travel plan, monitoring the education contribution of 59,241, subject to it not being double counted within the community infrastructure levy, and the long-term use of the adjacent land, which would be subject to detail within section 106.
So I had two additional elements. One was the link to the public footpath on the northern boundary to limit access for motorcycles and other motor vehicles. I've got 3, and to include community involvement in the layout and design of the open space.
Yeah, so the arrangement and agreement for all those elements will be delegated to the head of development management. So I'm now back to it.
Right, well, we're going to vote again because you've had it clearly to you now of what has been proposed. The committee managed to grant subject to those conditions. 6 those against, abstain, 1. Right, we'll move on to the next one. It's taking an hour and 20 minutes. That is it. Regulatory tires. Right, great. And it's down to the same.
Thank you, Chair. I think you want to read through some updates. I'll begin my presentation.
Just let everyone leave the room with lots of rustling.
Teachers talk so long.
Thanks, Ian.
Maybe it's just the battery. Thank you, Peter. So this is a full planning application seeking permission for the demolition, extension and refurbishment of an existing care home to form a 36-bed care home and the erection of a 2-storey care home with associated access and car parking. And this is at Morris Grange Nursing Home at Middleton Tyres. As you've just seen, there is a update report for this item, and specifically we have received legal advice that we need the local flood authority to comment on this application, because technically it's a major application. We have consulted LFA, but the comments are still awaited. Now, in respect to the local flood authority comments, the parish council and local residents have raised concerns about surface water drainage, and so I think that's useful for you to be aware of. The recommendation includes 2 conditions, one for foul water and one for surface water, details to be agreed and then complied with. So we don't have the detailed design of those yet. So on that basis, we have an updated recommendation to put to you, which is minded to grant subject to the local flood authority advising they have no objection either with or without conditions, and no new material representations having been raised, and subject to Section 106 agreement and conditions as listed in the committee report and as per the update list delegated to the head of development management. However, there is another option, and you could say, no, we do want those comments before we consider the item today, and therefore you could defer it rather than listening to the presentation. So we were just wanting to see whether you did want to hear the item today or defer before we commence.
How long are we likely to have to defer for, Fiona?
I think on the balance of probability, the lead local flood authority are likely to ask for some further information that will then subsequently be acceptable. So I think it would be January, February, March next year, realistically.
I wanted to remind you of the reference number 20. It's been on the book for 4 years. It's just a maybe. For you, your presentation.
Yeah. So, okay, so Fiona's already mentioned the proposal. I want to put in an overview. It is for the part demolition of the existing Morris Fringe nursing home that's refurbishment into a 36-bed care home, and the construction of a 2-storey apartment block with 13 care apartments. Now they comprise 9 single bedroom and 4 2-bedroom units, which replace a now demolished 2-storey building. There are improvements to the access and parking facilities proposed. So in terms of its location, it's a rural area. It's to the east of the A1 and just south of Middleton Tires. And I just want to go through the red line with you, which is on the one more. The red line includes a track which is in the ownership of the applicant, which is shared access to a number of properties that are located rather to the north of the site. I've got some photographs for those that weren't on the site visit. The first shows the entrance to the site from the road which runs in parallel to the A1 to the west there. Moving into the site, we can see the track which is used. It's a single lane track. There is one passing place at the moment that I'm aware of. As you move further into the site, you can see an entrance on the left there to the first of the residential properties, and that building with the red tile roof is the first of the care home facilities at the moment. If we move further into the site, you can see the parking area which has the track which runs through. And beyond that, you can see that there are some demolition works ongoing which are retrospective on the next photograph. Beyond that, the track then allows access into a number of properties, the first of which is Stable Cottage. Moving around to the south of the site, you're able to see there the south-facing elevations of the existing care home building. And to the right, and it is between what I believe is a sycamore tree, I'm not too sure of the second one, but the tallest to the right is where the previously located 2-storey building was. That housed bedrooms above and a utility building to the bottom. The next picture shows an aerial view of the site looking west. And you can see there to the bottom of the photograph footprint of the recently demolished 2-storey building. So in terms of the plans, this shows the existing layout, but you'll note there that I've highlighted the area that is now being demolished. And that's important because that is where the intended apartment building for the 13 care apartments will be located. If you take note of the layout of the existing buildings and to the proposed, on the next slide, you'll note that it's more or less the same as it is existing. And just to detail the size and location of the apartment building on the next slide, you'll be able to see that it is more or less in the same location as that which was demolished. The only difference really being that this one is a detached building. There are some detailed layout plans as well of the apartment buildings, which you can't really see from there, and some elevations which give you an idea of what it would look like. The developer classes it as a single story. You can see that there are 2 stories, but it is built into the sloping land, and depending on where you're looking at it from, it does look to be a lot lower than the land levels, certainly looking towards the east. So in terms of detail, the new care home is going to offer 36 new bedrooms with modern amenities, wider corridors and larger bedrooms. And they're needed to meet modern standards of care. The existing care home doesn't come up to standard in that regard. The new 2-story apartment, as has already been mentioned, will provide 13 apartments for individuals in need of care, and they're designed to be integrated with the main care home operation. Parking and access will be improved, and it includes 16 parking spaces as well as new turning areas, which altogether would make it a lot safer for visitors and service vehicles. Some of that parking is located around by the apartment building. In terms of the principle of the development, the existing care home historically had a 71-bed layout. It's been vacant since 2016, and it was bought out by the applicant in 2019. As mentioned before, it seeks to refurbish the existing building to accommodate a more modern 36-bedroom care home down from the 71, and the addition of the 13 care apartment units. Now, in terms of strategic housing market assessments, it's identified in the Richmondshire strategic plan that there's a clear need for such facilities, making the development important for meeting local care requirements for older persons. The proposal complies with CP8 in that the refurbishment of the care home reuses the existing structures and introduces modern care facilities. And policy CP4 typically restricts new building in rural locations outside of settlement limits, but the new apartment block is deemed acceptable as it replaces a recently demolished building of a similar scale. So this aspect of the development is supported by material considerations such as the previous use of the site and its proximity to the existing care home. In terms of the use class of these apartment buildings, and of course the care home itself, it will continue to operate under Class C2, which covers care homes, and to prevent apartments from being used as regular housing, which would be C3 use. We are using a Section 106 agreement to restrict occupancy to individuals in the need of care. This ensures the apartments would remain part of the overall care provision. In this situation, with the amended scheme, affordable housing is not required on site as the proposal benefits from a vacant building credit. Occupancy and tenure of the care home apartments can be secured through the Section 106 that I mentioned earlier. Whilst it's a relatively rural location, isolated, the reuse of the existing buildings, the modern energy saving measures and improved infrastructure contribute to the sustainability of the development as a whole. The reduction in the number of residential residents compared to the original 71 beds would also lessen the environmental and traffic impact on the surrounding area. It's largely compliant with local and national planning policy, with the reuse and the refurbishment element being fully supported. The new build aspect, which whilst not typically allowed under rural development policies, is considered acceptable due to the previous building's existence and the reduction of its scale. Additionally, the care home will provide essential services and employment opportunities, supporting local economy, fulfilling identified need for elderly care facilities. The proposal, I've been told by the applicant, will provide for 36 jobs. Again, supported by CP7, which aims to promote job creation in rural areas. The development would provide a positive economic impact through ongoing employment and healthcare services and related roles. So in terms of the overall design, it's fairly similar to what is there in terms of what's proposed. Buff brick, red clay pan tiles, there is some rendering. They would blend with the existing structures and landscape. Although the apartment building is 2-storey, it does replace and demolish a building of a similar scale. So in terms of visual impact on the countryside, it's considered acceptable due to the use of the existing landscape. And it is an overall reduced footprint compared to the previous 71-bed care home. In terms of the neighbours that I mentioned earlier to the north of the site, they have raised concerns over potential overlooking from the new 2-storey element of the proposal. However, the placement of the building and the lowering of its ground floor mitigate privacy concerns. There would be no significant adverse impact on neighbours' amenity in terms of overlooking or loss of privacy. Officers believe that vehicle traffic and noise from development are also expected to be less impactful compared to the former larger care home operation. In terms of biodiversity net gain, because of the age of the application, there's no requirement for the formal biodiversity contribution. However, there is a landscaping condition which is to be imposed to supplement and enhance the existing biodiversity on site, and that will be through tree protection and additional planting. In terms of the drainage and flooding, residents expressed concern over the drainage and flooding of the area. The site's flood zone 1, so low risk, though it does have a history of localised surface water flooding. The submitted drainage strategy includes a private sewerage treatment plant, and via conditions secured further information, it is expected that the site has capacity to address both surface water and foul drainage requirements. Residents also show concern over the adequacy of parking provision, the turning area for larger vehicles, and the condition of the access road as a whole. They highlight issues with the shared access, requesting that it be maintained during and after construction. This will be covered by a construction management plan. I believe the intention is to have a one-way system. The local highway authority reviewed the proposal and they've raised no objections, and they're happy, subject to condition. We've also secured a condition there for bicycle storage as well, which is recommended by consultees. In terms of ecology and trees, again, concern was expressed about the loss of trees and potential impacts on local wildlife, especially bats. I do know that a number of trees have been felled, but from what you could see from the pictures which were taken this week, the main and more important tree examples are maintained. In terms of fauna, an ecological survey confirmed presence of bats, and appropriate mitigation is recommended and will be conditioned. In terms of noise and construction management, concerns about noise, dust, construction, traffic disruption, local residents were able to provide concern through their objection, particularly regarding the shared access road and potential damage from heavy vehicles. Environmental health officers found that the potential nuisance to neighbouring properties would be minimal, provided noise and dust conditions are included in the permission. Other issues raised include concern over the proposed cafe. There is an inclusion of a small cafe in the plans as part of the main care home. and local residents were concerned that this might attract public visitors. However, it's intended primarily for staff and residents, their families, and so no conditions are deemed necessary to restrict that use. Officers believe that the matter is balanced with the local feedback, and I expect consultation of being addressed through planning condition and ensuring compliance with planning policy and minimise impact on the surrounding community. Fiona's already mentioned that officers are minded to grant subject to the LLFA, advising they've no objection, subject to conditions in material representation, section 106s, and as updated in the supplementary report. In that, so much that it should be delegated to head of development management. In addition to that, there is a supplementary verbal update that I would like to add to the proposed section 106. In that, we include a requirement for passing places on the shared access track through which the amount and location can be secured. This is because the passing places wouldn't be located within the red line of the boundary. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. The first speaker is John Gentry from Moulton Parish Meeting. Good morning. Would you? That's it. Good morning. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As Chairman of Moulton Parish Meeting, I've supported residents over the last 4.5 years as they've commented regarding this application, and also dealt with the inconvenience that has resulted from the work already carried out before planning permission has been granted. Residents at the Morris Grange hamlet lived comfortably alongside the former Morris Grange nursing home for many years, and have concerns now as the applicant proposes to add apartments to the site and in due course for bungalows subject to a separate planning application yet to be decided, turning a once perfectly acceptable care home into a potential retirement village. Councillor Thompson's submission to this meeting will detail the concerns of residents regarding this application. I've read the committee report. This has at last answered questions that we have raised for many months regarding the occupation status of the apartments, which will be C2, with at least one occupant of an apartment requiring care. I've also noted the numerous conditions that the planning authority recommends. Parish Meeting has concerns as to how these will be fulfilled. The approach of the applicant since the original application in 2020 has shown scant regard for planning procedures, having carried out extensive works prior to approval. I also understand the responsibility to fulfil conditions lies with the applicant, and if not carried out correctly, may lead to involvement of the enforcement team. Given the lack of cooperation from the applicant so far, what steps will the planning authority take to ensure that conditions are fulfilled? Questions remain regarding the adequacy of the on-site sewage that's been discussed with drainage facilities, and the agreements regarding access from the local access road and the road from the site leading to Scarra House Lane, incidentally where 13 static caravans have been dumped recently, also without planning permission. Residents have had access to this road for many years. Residents are not against the renovation of the care home. Indeed, they're eager to see the area tidied up after 4 years of disruption. However, they have serious concerns if this were to become a retirement village, as detailed in previous submissions you will have seen. In summary, there remain a number of concerns regarding expansion from a perfectly acceptable renovated care home to a potential retirement village. I urge the committee to take these matters into consideration when determining this application. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gentry. I'm now going to ask Vicky Davis from the Democratic Services to read a statement by the
David, colleagues.
Oh, right, sorry, I got the wrong officer.
It's all right.
But this is a statement from Councillor Angus Thompson, who is currently not here, but replaced by Councillor Jones.
Can you do an impression?
I'm not sure. Not a good one anyway. I'll try get through it, but stop me at 3 minutes because it's a page and a half. My constituents, particularly those who are residents of the hamlet of Morris Grange, are very supportive of the redevelopment of the nursing home grounds and access roads to bring the building and surrounding area back to a high standard after years of neglect. No one would want to live with the current derelict former nursing home building only 20 metres from their homes. However, the plans before the committee this morning leave me wondering what exactly the plan is. The previous retirement home did not have any apartments. I therefore think that the committee requires clarification from the applicant on a number of points before the application can be determined. These are as follows. Number one, confirmation of how the apartments will be managed. Are they to be managed, rented out or sold? Or indeed are they to be run as a housing association? This status will impact on the type of occupancy who live there. The original 2020 application identified these apartments as close care. This implies that care will be provided if residents require assistance. Number two, the previous care home did not have any separate apartments. I therefore state that the committee requires exact details of the intention regarding these apartments. Three, the apartment will have their own parking spaces. This implies that there will be an increase in daily traffic, not only from residents, but also their visitors. The access roads are not suitable for the amount of traffic these plans will bring to Morris Grange. Number four, I note that there are plans for a cafe and shop. The committee needs exact details of what will be the consequence of this proposal in terms of extra traffic and larger delivery vehicles. Number five, given that there are no bus services in the locality and both Middleton, Tyres and Moulton are a mile away, it is logical to assume that some of the workforce may wish to cycle to work. A cycle storage facility should be a requirement. Number six, the committee should seek clarification from the applicant regarding the residents of the hamlet's ongoing right of access from Scarrow House Lane to the hamlet, given that numerous residents have been using this access for more than 20 years. Number seven, it is understood that the applicant intends to install passing places on the access road from the local access road, which goes from Moulton to Scotch Corner. Residents accept that they have a shared responsibility for this road, but the bulk of the traffic, including HGVs, will be attributable to the applicant. A clear plan for an ongoing responsibility for the maintenance of this road needs to be put in place. Number eight, the Environment Agency have stipulated conditions regarding the sewage plan and state that due to the projected usage by the nursing home Morris Grange will require a special permit. Full details of this and how the applicant intends to deal with it need to be clarified in writing as part of the determination process. In summary, there is a considerable doubt in my mind and certainly in the minds of my constituents who are not only resident in the hamlet of Morris Grange, but the wider surrounding communities about the applicant's intention regarding the apartments. The North Yorkshire Council enforcement team are no strangers to the site being brought forward under this planning application. The matters which enforcement have been called to include buildings on the site being demolished, buildings being re-roofed, many trees.
Can I interrupt you there? I'm afraid you've had 3 minutes.
There's quite a way to go as well.
Now I turn to Councillor Jones, who is standing in for Councillor Thompson.
Conveniently, my question follows on from where we were interrupted there, which is, I understand this planning application is for demolition and construction, but I can see in that photo that the demolition has already taken place. Is that correct?
From my understanding, in part, those photographs are less than 24 hours on, so they're bang up to date and give you an idea of what's going on. They are still, as I understand it, actively working on the site. So I don't think that it is fully demolished yet.
The biggest demolition they've undertaken is at the bottom of this image. That was a building that's now gone, so the application is part retrospective.
Right.
Just to point out, there were a number of conservatories and offshoots, and just as part of the rationalisation, those seem to have gone as well. I think they're on the south elevations, but certainly at the moment the most activity has been the two-storey element, and also a lot to the north as well, where a lot of the original house as it was has a lot of walls having been removed recently.
Any more questions from members? Councillor Watson by a short hand.
You made sure that. Yeah, I continue with the concerns as regards the work that's been carried out to date. Since when do people start demolishing the property before they got any form of permission to go ahead or even engaged in the discussions around it? Yes, it's a care home. It should remain a care home. However, there's a danger here that if the application isn't conditioned sufficiently, that its use could change. Going back to one of the minor points, the cafe, that should not be open to the public. That should only be open to visitors to the site and residents. And I'm sure that's achievable because I've seen it in other care homes. That would discourage more traffic coming on the site. Certainly access-wise, if you're going to increase the likelihood of residents with vehicles, that road is not adequate. So therefore we need to secure access going out through the site and a one-way system leaving that area that doesn't conflict with the road coming in. What I would like to see is further details and an assurance that no further work will go ahead until we've got clarification on the points to date. So personally, I would go to defer decision.
Councillor Foster.
Just about to say a lot of that actually. Yet again, we have a respective planning planners. Can I ask if there's any enforcement officers been down there to start enforcement procedures against this? I note also in 10.23, prior to the submissions of the planning applications, they were already chopping trees down without, and then the councils had to intervene and looked at it. Unfortunately, none of the trees were of high value have been taken away. I'm absolutely fed up with people doing this, and I'm going to go along with, for me, mainly because of this, and of God knows what else we're going to find out. I'm going to second that deferral, and I think, I'm sorry it's delayed, but it's some of the actions from the developer has caused me to come to this decision that, and I really hope enforcement officers take an action against this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones.
If this application is retrospective for the demolition aspect, how much work can they basically, if we do defer this, can they carry on demolishing until there's nothing left? Because it is already a retrospective application, isn't it?
There isn't much, there's hardly anything left to demolish because they're converting the rest of the building. They've also undertaken engineering works around where this building's being demolished, reducing ground levels, because you saw in the earlier sections that there's going to be a lower ground floor and then the first floor. And they have not, there's no offence under the law until we served an enforcement notice on them and they've not complied with that notice. So we can't determine that as part of this committee, but obviously as officers I can speak to the enforcement team and just say, this has been raised, please look into it, please liaise with the ward member. That'll be separate to the vote today. But the enforcement officers and myself have been to site multiple times, and the reason why we finally have this application at the point where we could make a decision is because officers have spoken to them explaining why they need to do it, otherwise enforcement action could have occurred. For example, the main issues, we didn't have a bat survey, we finally got that this summer, which enabled us to meet our legal requirements for consideration of protected species. And however, I would not recommend deferring or refusing the application on the fact it's retrospective, the fact that they've done things that we recommend they don't do, but isn't an offence. Instead, it would be what information do you need to find out. So do they agree to the cafe being non-open to the public and expanding the section 106 accordingly? Is it that you do want the LFA comments? Is it because you want a little bit more information on the access arrangements and the state of the road, for example. That's up to you. But you could just make it really clear, just make sure when, if you do defer, we come back with the information that you were looking for.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, it's when you mention the engineering works about the ground level, is that construction work?
So the definition of development is split. So one of them is engineering works. So when you start changing ground levels and, you know, maybe putting in stability elements, ground retention walls, that's not the right word. Retaining wall, thank you, Peter. And that would often be classed as engineering. So it's just under the Town and Country Planning Act of 1990 is the specific definition, and that requires planning permission.
Right, okay, thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Morehouse.
Yeah, obviously, disappointed that, you know, this has been going on. I don't know how long they've been on site and taking the buildings down, but there weren't people on site when we had site visits. There's somebody on there all the time. And, you know, I would hate to think that if we defer this, they'll just continue to do what they've been doing. And again, you have responded, Fiona. But I do think that, you know, we've got to show some teeth in enforcement at times, but that's not what I was going to raise, really. We're talking about the cafe. We had a look at it. Let's see where it's going to be. I mean, the way to restrict that is to make it small. I mean, I don't know how big the cafe is actually. I mean, if it's going to be a small sort of spot, I mean, you can only get so many people in there. We could restrict it by doing that, really, I would suggest, because we saw where the entrance was and where there was some parking. But quite frankly, it is a building site, and it wasn't quite clear how many car parking spaces there were. Whereas Angus alluded to about where the people are going to park for the apartments, I'm not totally clear about that, really, unless I haven't picked up on it, really. And I do think that I wasn't thinking about before, but having listened to what's been said, and I'm sorry, but possibly the applicant have shown a bit more like respect for the planning authority. We wouldn't be in this situation, and I'm going to support the film. But I'd like to come back on how big this caddy is. Thank you.
By its nature, it's quite small. They've used the word cafe. It could quite easily be referred to as a common room. It's an area.
Yes, exactly how big is it?
It's exactly how big it is, I don't know, but I could come back to you on that. But looking at the plan, certainly we can do that now. So the cafe itself, it's all blurred out.
It is. It's somewhere in there.
So you'll forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain it was one of these two buildings here. These are there's a lounge here and a kitchen and various utilities.
That one exactly.
Right, okay. So it's slightly larger than the entrance foyer.
And it's about the size of 1.5 bedrooms.
You would probably
So you maybe get
if
10 people in.
At push. I would say maybe three tables at the moment.
Sorry, Chair, just to go back. Obviously, was from memory, was it outside seating though as well?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. Thank you.
That's what she said to it.
Thank you. How many disabled bays are there for parking? I looked and there's either two with the lines on, or it could be a third one. I'm not sure.
I'll have to check on the report.
Yeah, on the plan, there looks to be definitely two. Not at the front by the new building, but like definitely two. But I'm not sure if the next one is whatever. I don't think there's enough really to say what the facility is proposed to be and what it already is. I'm surprised that there is could be only 3. But regarding the cafe as well, I mean, I'd like to say it at the beginning actually, that this is much needed. We really need care home facilities, a retirement village. I can understand nearby residents not wanting it to be a retirement village, but it's a much needed facility in North Yorkshire. There's care homes and assisted living and everything. But regarding the cafe, does it really matter how big the cafe is? Because how many people are going to go there? Nobody knows. So wouldn't it be better that that's a nice meeting place for people who live there, not outside people, but live there, and when the visitors come, you can take them for a coffee, and at least you're outside your own four walls. You can go somewhere, you can go across by the trees and go into the next building. So I'm not at all concerned about the size of the cafe. I'm sure it'll be proportionate, but I'm not over sure about deferring it. I understand what everybody's saying, and I will go along with what they say, but the thing itself is much needed.
Thank you. I would like to put 5 votes in here and ask you to be clear about the reasons that you're deferring, because I've got a feeling that it's as much about retrospective, which isn't a reason. So, would you, those of you who propose, Councillor Foster?
Yeah, in like what you just said, Chair, I'd like to remove my second of that motion. Very much.
Was there a motion? Was there a motion? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a proposal.
Councillor Watson, wasn't it? You proposed.
Yeah.
I missed that. It's not completely, is it? Well, it was complete until such time as Councillor Foster took away his seconding.
Yeah. I'm quite happy withdraw that suggestion, shall we say. What I would go for, which I don't know how the rest of the committee feel, is approval subject to the points that we raised as regards access, parking. I would ask that the wording cafe is removed. It can be called a resident cafe, but not cafe, because that infers it could be open to the public. And as regards of the ongoing access for the residents up there, that a one-way system was put in place during construction, and when construction is completed, that both accesses are available to residents of the new property and the existing ones.
Scarrow.
Sorry?
The Scarrow Lane, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Scarrow House.
I think we're caught between a rock and a hard place in that the work has gone ahead and it's being done for whatever reasons. It's very disappointing that this is happening again. However, we have to deal with the situation as it is, and that situation is that site is an eyesore and it needs bringing back to life. Its future use needs safeguarding by ensuring that going forward it's fully available to residents with that care need. So I am proposing approval subject to.
Right, before we take your vote, we'll need a second, and before we do that, I want to ask Councillor Hughes.
I was just about to second it, for the reasons that on the retrospective bit, because I've been on planning committees for a long time, and we once got something to the National Park Committee. A guy built a shed probably holding about 200 dairy cows and then applied for planning permission. So I think once you've seen them all, it could have been managed with a stop notice, the enforcement. It hasn't. It's not listed, it's not advertising. So unfortunately, there's a group of developers that just tend to use this as part of the tools in the box of development, which is unfortunate, but it's the world we live in. I think we've got to applaud the sort of self-contained units, the self-living, independent living. And then we can focus more on people who are in need with the shortage of staff that we've got. And on the cafe situation, given what goes on across the road at the service station, I think we're not going to get too many people there, surely. If you're hungry, you're going to go to Scotch Corner Services. So I will second Councillor Watson's proposal.
Any more? Councillor Jones.
Can I suggest, is there a way that we could put a restrictive note on the cafe so that only residents and those visiting and staff can use it?
Right.
No, go on.
between the two of you?
I think we're in agreement. Yes, we can condition that if it's considered important from discussion. It sounds like it is.
Can we add that as a condition then?
Certainly, and I'll check the final wording with the chair, because I would like to make it available to members of staff and workers. So if there was a plumber that they could have a coffee.
Yeah.
Right, so from deferral, we now have proposal for minding to grant, I think, would be appropriate expression. Yes. I've got 3 issues: access, parking, and cafe issues. You want to elaborate on that, Peter?
But we are also waiting on the report from the flood authority, aren't we?
Yeah, LMFA.
And the guys as well.
Good.
Yeah.
Right, so it would be minded to grant subject to the LFA advising we have no objections, subject to or not subject to conditions, and no new material representations having been raised, and subject to a section 106 agreement and conditions as listed in the committee report and updated in the update report delegated to the head of development management. In addition, there would be a further heads of terms for section 106 to secure passing places. There would be an additional condition limiting the cafe's use to residents, staff and visitors. And that Scurra Lane, if I got the lane's name correct, will be available for the residential properties to the northeast of the building. What was the one on parking?
Councillor Watson, you asked for confirmation on parking. You also mentioned one-way system. Sorry, Councillor Sedgwick mentioned the single parking. You wanted to know if there were any.
We could do an additional condition requiring the final details of the parking arrangements to be submitted and agreed prior to any further works.
That is already on the recommended list of conditions of highways. So that information will be forthcoming as part of that.
Right, you're all clear about that? Minded to grant subject to those conditions. Those in favour, please show. Those against? Abstain? So 6-1. Okay. Right, thank you. We now move on to Newson, where we have a presentation from Fiona.
Wait, Karen.
Do we need to wait for Karen?
Or the council staff.
We'll just have a moment while the other member comes back.
Thank you.
NIMBY, so you ever thought we'd have NIMBY starters in that? I don't know what he talked about. You know, exactly how close to it. Because I'm most against anything. Basically, the more solar panel farms, the more measure of strategic planning.
Okay.
It's a nice job.
You didn't wait for me, did you?
Oh, yes.
Really? Oh, sorry.
We could go without
couldn't
you.
wait for you. So. Sorry, thank you.
Right, we're now at Newton, and it's the owner to present the application.
So this is a reserved matters application following the grant of outline planning permission for a single dwelling, including landscaping, appearance, scale, and layout. And during the course of the application, it has been revised, the proposal. So the site is to the east of Mer Lane and the north of Hilltop. You can see it here in the red line. This is an old aerial photograph. It doesn't show newer buildings that have since been built. And the outline location plan that was approved is on the right-hand side, and that granted permission for 2 dwellings. And this reserve matters, there's a smaller red line for 1 dwelling. So what that means is, from a legal perspective, our understanding is they will have to, if this is approved today, still come forward with the second reserve matters for the second plot, so that they've met how the conditions are exactly worded. And so we have to be satisfied, if you grant it today, that the second plot wouldn't be precluded by this first reserve matters application. And here is the site. So this is it in front of us, and then on the other side you can see some new built dwellings that are being built. On the left-hand side, there's Moor Lane, with the application site on the right-hand side. And then the picture on the right-hand side shows Hilltop, which is a Grade 2 listed building, which would be opposite the proposed plot. And there's also, to the right-hand side, these are new build dwellings that have been erected in the last couple of years. And again, the new build on the left and the application site on the right there. You can see there's existing trees to be retained. And views from the access point, and Hilltop again from a different angle. And here's the proposed block plan. So you can see they've got a semi-detached garage, east facing rear garden. The access position has been queried by the parish council residents. Is it in the right position? But I've taken measurements and it does comply with the outline approved access point. And then we have the layout. So you can see it's quite a large property. It's 4 bedrooms. There is an outline condition saying that one of the dwellings has to be a smaller unit of either 2 or 3 bedrooms. So this is a larger one, and the second plot would have to be a smaller one. And here is the elevation. So this is one of the key changes, is they've changed the materials proposed. And so it's now gone for a more traditional exterior rubble stonework with coin stone finishing and slates for roofs. They also originally had a 3rd floor, so rooms in the roof, but that didn't technically comply with the outline conditions. So they've had to remove that, and it's meant that the overall ridge height can be not as tall as if you have a 3rd floor of accommodation, which is better for its visual impact at the edge of the village. And it's obviously opposite a listed building as well, so you wouldn't want it considerably higher than that property. And here is the street view from Mer Lane. So this shows a wall, and on the site visit, the parish council did point out that actually this wall might be longer than it can be in reality. So this elevation may not be entirely precise in respect to that wall. However, we have proposed that landscaping is submitted and agreed as a condition. So this wall wouldn't be approved, and that all to be agreed. Another concern raised was drainage. There's been some water sitting on some of the fields in this locality. So the detailed surface water scheme is to be agreed, and that's secured via the outline condition. And then, as a point of a couple of verbal updates, my apologies, we have missed a construction management plan condition and an external lighting condition. So I would like to update the recommendation to include those additional conditions on the reserve matters. The rural location, there isn't really a good highways verge for people to park on, so we do want the construction workers to be mainly contained and parked on site. So they'll seem reasonable, this specific location. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. The first speaker is an objector, Monica Warren-Ewick.
Thank you, Chair and councillors. You'll already have read the summary of objections, and many of you visited the site on Monday. So you'll understand that there's been a large number of concerns by many residents about this application. I'd particularly like to bring to your attention the provision for surface water drainage. We understand from the applicant that a land survey has yet to be carried out, but as this land is predominantly boulder clay, we worry that one soakaway indicated on the plan will not provide enough surface water drainage, and this build will further exacerbate an already existing problem with water runoff onto Moor Lane. In the report, it states that drainage was addressed at outline, but the outline plans indicated 2 small dwellings surrounded by gardens, whereas this application is for a property with a large footprint relative to the size of the plot. When the double garage, hard standing for parking, and paving surrounding the property are taken into consideration, this surely must affect the drainage of the surrounding area. The size of the property relative to the size of the plot was included in many of the objections from residents. So although drainage is not a reserved matter, we ask for some firm assurances that this build will not cause an increased flood risk to neighbouring properties, particularly those lower down the hill, such as our own. The Kemp shows very few details for how the construction of such a large property will be managed on a limited site set on a narrow lane. There's no mention of how the large timber frame will be delivered and manoeuvred into position on site, which will certainly require the use of a crane. There are trees on the adjacent verge. These are not shown on revision D of the plans, which will further affect this being delivered. The Kemp doesn't mention how connection to the foul water drains and electricity, both of which are on the opposite side of the road, will be managed. This is a narrow lane used by large farm vehicles on a regular basis. Many residents are worried that construction support vehicles will create traffic problems and potentially cause damage to the verges and surrounding area. We're also extremely concerned that as so few details have been provided on the Kemp, and ask that before building begins, a more detailed Kemp should be in place. We appreciate that the planning officers have already asked the applicant to make changes to the materials to be used and to adhere to the outline planning condition for no more than 2 stories. But we ask you to consider the many relevant objections expressed by near neighbours and residents of the village.
Can I hold you there? I'm afraid you've had your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Louise Taylor from Newsom Parish Council.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. Newsom Parish Council has consulted widely with residents on this application, which has received a significant number of objections. We appreciate the applicant subsequently attended a meeting to outline in person amendments made to date, which we welcome. The applicant was also able to listen to our remaining concerns. However, we respectfully request that further conditions are imposed on the following matters to ensure that the proposed development is in keeping with the listed buildings opposite and is consistent with conditions placed on the recently completed new build properties opposite. That windows are of a traditional thatch style, cream or neutral colour as the new build houses. The stonework matches the new build properties opposite to ensure continuity of finish. Any trees during loss of construction process are replaced. Low-level exterior lighting only to be used when needed and is kept to a minimum with no PR sensors permitted to avoid traffic distraction and maintain darkness on the lane. The dry stone wall is retained and built to 1.3 metres to match existing walls adjoining the plot. To minimise disruption to neighbours and road use of this narrow undulating lane, we request that a limit be placed on working hours Monday to Friday 8 AM to 5 PM with no weekend or bank holiday working. All construction vehicles and materials are to be contained within the site boundary during construction. As the house is to be of a timber frame construction, assurances that deliveries will be made safely to the site without blocking the lane for long periods of time, and how this will be achieved safely during the narrow access to the site. Regarding access to the site itself, residents and the parish council still have concerns. Although the planning officer has confirmed it's in the correct position in relation to the junction, it is directly opposite the entrance to Westview, the new build, which is different to the drawings which were approved at outline stage. These clearly showed it being opposite the verge midway between Hilltop and Westview. This would indicate that the approved drawings were incorrect in this particular aspect. We feel the street view drawing reference 03A submitted by the applicant is a little misleading as it shows a larger distance between the end of the southern gable and the southern boundary wall on the road junction. This is considerably shorter than actually illustrated. This has been raised to the planning officer. We fully understand this site will be developed but remain concerned about the large footprint of this house in relation to the actual plot size and the practicalities of such a small dual access entrance in relation to the property's parking and turning area. The new build properties opposite demonstrate how much area is actually required for a safe turning area to enable vehicles to enter and exit the site in a forward gear as required by highways. This could also be severely compromised if gates are installed on this proposed property. We would like to thank those members of the planning committee who visited the site earlier this week, and we also appreciate the opportunity to make this statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to ask the officer from Democratic Services to read a statement by the division member, Councillor Angus Thompson.
As ward member, I asked for the planning application to be called in for determination by the committee because the reserved matters application, which was submitted, differed widely from the outline application for the site granted earlier. Parish Council expressed great concern about the application being considered today. Councillor Louise Taylor from the Parish Council will no doubt have given the committee the Parish Council's view of the stipulations which should be imposed on the applicant if the committee is minded to grant permission of the application. I understand that the applicant has agreed to include many of the stipulations if permission is granted, but it is my view that if the committee are minded to grant permission, then they must be written into that permission. The committee will no doubt have noticed during their site visit that directly opposite the site in question on Moor Lane are a number of recent newly built houses which have been completed to a very high standard and are totally in keeping with what is a very picturesque village. The residents and parish council alike are supportive of the application, but only if what is granted by the committee upholds with the building standards in the area.
Thank you very much. Finally, Mary Ferguson is speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been asked to speak on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Preston, in support of this application. As members are aware, effectively planning permission was already granted for the erection of up to 2 dwellings on this land, together with their access onto the highway. So this permission is extant. What's before you today is effectively an application to simply agree details pertaining to that permission. It's not within the council's control to revisit that planning permission, revoke it or change it in any way, and you can't legally decide today that access or 2 houses or indeed 1 is unacceptable. I was not involved in making either application. I'm a planning consultant and the applicant just wanted me to represent him to help ensure his interests are represented here today. In doing so, I've reviewed in detail both the outline and reserved matter the applications made, and I've read the objections to them. And there are certainly a lot of objections. But my opinion is that they're either without justification or the applicant has addressed them satisfactorily, such as there are no reasonable grounds to turn down this application. The refusal of this application would seriously impact on the applicant financially and would inevitably lead to a costly and unnecessary appeal. And so in presenting this case, I would like to politely ask you to bear this in mind. He has purchased a plot of land on which to build a house for him and his family, and regrettably has brought along with it a great deal of community opposition. In an effort to address the objections and satisfy the community and the parish council, he has amended the proposal quite significantly. The house is to be constructed of stone with materials closely matching those utilised in nearby existing buildings. The application site is not within the conservation area, and matters of taste and what local people may prefer to see is not really the measure here of what is acceptable. What the applicant has proposed is a perfectly acceptable building in keeping with the surroundings and entirely in line with the outline permission given by the Planning Committee in 2023.
There are conditions imposed on the outline permission that must still be complied with in relation to matters such as surface water and foul drainage and parking and turning within the site. It may surprise you to know that, with the exception of the garage, this house is only 8 square metres more than shown in the outline planning permission. And don't forget, the scheme is also monitored by building regulations as well in terms of surface water and drainage. So I hope this gives members the certainty they need that the development will be a high quality one and that it will fit in well with its surroundings, causing no harm to neighbours, highway safety or amenity. So I hope that members are able to offer their support today. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Stood into silence. Councillor Foster.
I understand the parish's concerns. I see a lot of them, unfortunately, as I mentioned before, we have to follow the planning policy framework here. It's a document we must adhere to, and unfortunately there's a lot of them that are non-material really, and we have to stick by them. So as much as I like, again, greenfield sites, I don't like them built on, but actually if you follow the NPPF, and we have no option but to accept this. So, Chair, I'd like to propose we accept this application. Thank you.
So, Mrs. Morehouse.
On a different matter, at the site visit, when we had a look at it, there was some discussion, Chair, if you recall, about it's actually a dry stone wall that's the boundary, and opposite there is a listed building. But further down, I think there was other stone wall, and I think that was highlighted. What exactly did we have about the stone wall, and what have we got down to be the boundary wall?
So the boundary hasn't been agreed, and instead that would be an approval of details application. However, if members thought the boundary is particularly important today and wanted that condition updated to specify the type of boundary, that could be done.
Okay, obviously it's not a listed stone wall. I mean, there was different discussions about one end of the village that had a different type, but it is opposite a listed building with a stone wall. Presumably that when the work's carried out, it probably get damaged anyway. I'm not sure, and I think it did refer to the fact that this is probably more expensive to have a stone wall. I'm not quite sure, but I'll be welcome to know what other members think about the request about the stone wall. Thank you.
My own personal view is I don't think dry stone walling is all that appropriate because it's more likely to collapse compared with the mortar set construct. Councillor Jones.
Would it be possible for us to stipulate the limited working hours proposed by the parish council? So that's 8 to 6, Monday to Friday, no weekends, no holidays, no bank holidays.
Yes, it is unusual not to allow construction works on a Saturday morning, though. That would be like typical across North Yorkshire Council, though. So I would suggest that amendment.
Yeah, I could accept that.
So that would be Saturday 8 till 12 noon.
And I would also raise with members as well the other concerns that the parish raised, which was the windows. We've already talked about the dry stone wall, but also the trees on the site as well, and whether we want to stipulate the retention of the existing trees.
Yeah. There is a material condition, so we could update that to specifically require details of the windows, including colours, to be submitted with at the same time as the walls and the roof. And then the trees, there's an outline condition with an arboricultural impact assessment that requires their retention and protection.
Okay.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, could we just clarify the access to the site? Because obviously it was granted with a view to 2 smaller properties. Yet this application seems to take all of that access as you enter the site. Does look as if there's a turning to the left-hand side, possibly, for future development. However, by the time you've done that, where are the turning circles going to be?
Yeah, so they would need to have a civil agreement that the darker part is this property is allowed access over this part, and then these have this turning area so they can come out and forward here.
Yeah.
So that's highways have found that to be acceptable.
Good, thank you.
I've got a proposal, but I ain't got a second. Councillor Gilgill.
Yeah, I would second it if we could put in that we condition that, and differ in your opinion of dry stone walls. I think we should have a dry stone wall there. I think Councillor Moorhouse is minded to agree with me on that one. So if we could put that in as a condition, I would second it.
What's the difference between a lowland farmer and an upland farmer? Well, I'm not going to be hung up to dry about this. If you want a condition for a dry stone wall, then so be it.
Thank you. Can we also condition that the windows come back as reserve matter for officers?
It is reserve matter.
Yeah, it's just the terminology just tweak it. So they'd have to submit an approval of detailed application, which would put on a public register, and then officers would determine it. But the parish council can register updates. All applications in the area could comment on it if they wish.
Any more for any more? It's been proposed and seconded that this application be granted, or amended to grant.
No.
No, it's granted.
It was one subject to the working or conditions referred to the general interview.
Right. It's been proposed and seconded, and I'm going to put it in my words now, that this application be granted subject to agreement on the wall and other matters being agreed in conjunction with the chairman.
Yeah, so if you're going with the proposal and second to grant, what you then need to be happy with is your delegation of the wording of those additional conditions that you've asked Fiona to do. And she does that in consultation with, we usually say the chair and the vice chair, so that they agree that it doesn't come back. So it's that's the usual way forward.
I'm happy as that to be part of my proposal, Chair.
I'm pleased about that.
Right advice from the seconder.
Those in favour of said proposal? That's unanimous. Right, thank you very much. Item 7, such business as in the opinion of the chairman should by reason of special circumstances be considered as a matter of urgency. Not aware of anything at this stage. Therefore, the next meeting will be on, given that there's a business sufficient, on the 14th of November.